Hello, my name is Ray Larkin, and I am the host of the RaRa. All right, so here we go. It's episode number 1. I am very excited for this. So thank you very much for joining. Thanks for checking it out. Thank you for listening or for watching. And yeah, let's do it. Episode 1. Here we go. All right. So I guess I'll start off by saying just a few things about the show, about how it's kind of formatted and stuff like that. Then I'll introduce myself as well, and I'll also tell you a bit about where I am right now. And then we'll dive into some topics. So let's do it. Episode number 1. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so I'm very stoked to get started. So, okay, hopefully everything's all right. I kind of check the audio levels and stuff like that. We'll see how the wind plays out. This is episode number 1, so we might be dealing with some technical things or whatever, but hopefully we'll get some of the kinks worked out. And as we go along, we're gonna, improve stuff and make it so it's better, perhaps if there are issues today. But hopefully we'll be okay today. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But right. So I guess I'll hop into things. So first of all, a bit about the show. So, all right. So the RaRa is going to be a weekly podcast, and I'm going to be releasing new episodes on Fridays. Right. So after this, we're going to be putting out new episodes each Friday. I might be doing live episodes as well at some point. I don't know. But most shows I'm probably going to record the day of, most likely. I might do it a day or two before, depending on scheduling and things like that. But yeah, I'm planning on releasing new episodes each Friday, so it's a weekly show. And on the show, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different topics, right? I'm going to be talking about things that I'm interested in, but I'm also going to be talking about things that are in the news and world happenings and stuff like that too. So we have lots and lots of fascinating subjects to delve into. And then as far as I go, so my name is Ray Larkin, and I'm going to be hosting the show. We're also going to be having some other guests on as well, so I'm really excited about that. But as far as me, so I grew up in New England. I've lived in a few different places in the world. Mostly I've lived in New England, where I grew up, in Massachusetts, and I've also lived in California for a while, mostly in San Francisco, and I lived in Big Sur for a little bit. I lived in LA a little bit, but most of my time in California was in San Francisco. And then I've also lived in New York City as well, Brooklyn and Manhattan. And most recently, I've lived in Tulum for about 5 years or so down in Mexico, where I am now. I'm in Mexico now. I'm in Oaxaca right now. But anyhow, I've lived in Tulum for a while as well. And now I believe I'm moving to the Pacific Northwest. I think that's the plan. We're going to see how it goes. I'm going out there in just a few weeks, and I'm starting a new business. So I own a couple of businesses, but one of the businesses that I'm starting now is an app company, and so I really love the app space. Like, I find it to be really interesting. It's just a fascinating realm to be a part of, because the technology is changing so fast, and there's just so much happening in that space. And so I'm starting this app company, and I got some really cool apps in the works. So we'll talk more about those as we go along throughout the show. But I'm really excited for this new chapter of my life. And as far as this show goes, so I'm going to be filming wherever I happen to be. So I do travel a bit, and so like, for example, the last few weeks I was in New York, and then I guess I was in Miami, and then Austin, and then now here in Oaxaca in Mexico. I'm going to Tulum next week, and then probably back to Austin, and then most likely up to Seattle before going back to Massachusetts and up in New England for a couple weeks in the spring. And so I'm just going to bring the show on the road, right? We're just going to kind of film from wherever I happen to be. So I have a mobile setup. It looks pretty good. I've got a microphone here and some other stuff, some lighting and things like that. So hopefully everything works out decently. Like I said earlier, this is the first episode, so if there's issues with audio, or if there's issues with some of the video quality or whatever else, I'll try to watch back and I'll see how it looks, and hopefully I'll improve things for future shows. So if anyone, by the way, has any suggestions or feedback, I'd love to hear it, because I'm hoping to make the show really good. I hope it's not boring too, right? Like, one of my fears about the show is that no one likes it and everyone just thinks it's super lame, and then I'm like, like, I made a podcast and it's terrible. That would not be fun. So I'm hoping we do talk about some interesting things, and I hope that people get engaged and and actually enjoy some of the stuff we talk about. I'm gonna have some great guests too, so it should be fun. that'll help to keep things interesting. So it's not just me talking about stuff for, an hour on end. And then, so, all right. So I talk a little bit about me, a little bit about the show. What else? A couple more things about me, I guess, before we hop into things. I love making music and film and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm at my best when I'm creating, right? Like, so when I'm putting together like a song that it's dear to my heart, or something with film, or some kind of creative venture. I feel that way about apps too, by the way. Apps are very creative for me. I look at the phone as almost being like a canvas, and so these creative ventures for me are like really kind of what get me going, right? And the podcast is like this too, right? The podcast is a creative thing. It's something that I'm putting a lot of work into, and I hope it's good. So stuff like this is really kind of what drives me, and I'm really excited though, because I have a lot of stuff coming out soon. I've kind of been working for a while on a lot of different projects. I've put together a whole bunch of songs, and I have a whole bunch of clips. Like, for example, me and my friend Marcelo, who's going to be on the show later, he's our first guest. We filmed a show down in Tulum called Escenas de Tulum, which means scenes from Tulum, and that was a couple years back, and we recorded all kinds of funny scenes. I dressed up as different characters, right? Like I was, I don't know, I was like a kind of like a health guru kind of guy with like a man bun and stuff, wearing like a kimono. His name was Nub Num, which is actually man bun spelled backwards. He was one of the characters in the show, and so I kind of walked around dressed up as him. I dressed up as another guy called Sleazio. He was like a real estate agent. There was another one called Stuart Skipperson. That's one of my favorite ones. Stuart Skipperson was just like a really dorky guy, like from the U.S. Who was like a tourist. He had like a fanny pack and stuff, and I don't know. He was a funny character. Hey, I'm Stuart Skipperson. That's how he talks. So anyway, so we have a whole bunch of those clips that I'm going to put out pretty soon. And so we got some music coming. We got some film stuff coming. I also filmed a music video called Mas Burrito that we're putting out really soon. And that got filmed like last year. It's actually a comedic take on Despacito. It's like the song, the famous song. It's like, Mas Burrito, this is what we eat in Puerto Escondido. This is where I am right now. How's it going? Mas Burrito, this is what we eat in Puerto Escondido. Tortilla de harina y frijoles negro, mucho guacamole y un salsa de pico. Mas Burrito, this is what we eat in Puerto Escondido. Maíz tostada, arroz, crema y queso, salsa picante y una copa de vino. My favorite part of taquerias is the salsa bar. I try every salsa there and then go back for more. I love the spicy red and the mild creamy green, jalapeno poblano. I'm forgetting the lyrics, but anyways, you'll see it soon. So we got that coming out, and hopefully some great apps too, some fun apps. I have one app that's like meant for people meeting each other when they're traveling. Another app that we're doing that one I really can't talk about yet. It's a bit of a kind of secret in the works kind of app. There's another one that I'm doing though that's about color. An app that's built about it's made around color therapy. And so it's like really cool. It's like a very meditative app where you look and you see different colors and they're kind of moving around and you can kind of like feel the colors. For me, colors are really important. Like when I see different colors, I feel like their energy, So if I look at like indigo, which is like my favorite color, like a deep blue, I feel like, whoa, I just kind of feel that energy of that color. And so it's just a beautiful, like kind of therapeutic type of thing. And so anyway, so I want to put that into an app and it's going to be really fun, I think. So anyhow, so we got some songs, we got some films, we got some app stuff, we got the podcast. It's a really exciting time in my life because some of the things that I've been working on for a long time are starting to come into fruition. So I want to take you along, all my friends, like anyone who wants to watch the show. I want or be a part of the show even. I want to hopefully show you some of the stuff as we go forward and get out some of these creative ventures, right? As far as the guests go, by the way, I want to have some really interesting guests on the show. Our first guest is going to be Marcelo, who I hope you're going to love. He's like one of my best friends in the world. I love him. Such a sweet guy, really dear friend to me, and he actually was in Oaxaca he's here for about a month, and I came down just a few days ago, and I went to Mexico City, and then I came to Oaxaca, and I surprised him, right? I'm not sure what just happened with the video there, but I guess we're just gonna roll with it. If the video just turned dark, it looks like it did on my phone, but anyways, we'll roll with it. I'll try to fix it in post-op, but we'll see how it goes. But anyways, yeah, I apologize if the video just kind of went a little bit lower in it looks like it did right here in brightness. Not sure what that was, but like I said, we're probably gonna have some technical issues throughout the first episode, so just please bear with. I hope the wind's not too bad either. If the wind is hitting the mic, that's something I'm gonna fix for the next show too, but we'll see how it goes. But anyhow, my friend Marcelo, yeah, I came down here and I just kind of showed up at his house, you know, and was like, "What's up, man?" His face was just like in shock for about like a minute and a half. He was like, "What are you doing here?" I was fooling with him. I was on the phone with him earlier that day, and I said I was in Austin, and I was like, I wish I could come down there. I'm so bummed I can't make it. You know, you're in Oaxaca, and here I am in Austin, you know. And then I just showed up at his door and was like, "Marcello, what's up, brother?" So you'll meet him, but he's going to be our first guest today, and then, you know, in other episodes we're going to have other guests too. My good friend Q, we talked about that when I was up in Massachusetts a few weeks back. He might join the show at some point, and then I have some other friends who I think I'm going to try to coerce to get on the show too. So I have a lot of interesting friends. Like, that's one of the parts of my life that has been really beautiful. I've got to surround myself with some of the best people on this planet Earth. You know, I've lived in some cool places. I've, you know, traveled into a lot of different countries and stuff. And for some reason, I've really just gotten to meet some just like people that just kind of like are just like dreams, you know, they're just like these beautiful, beautiful beings, you know, I don't know, male, female, just people that I've got to know and just, you know, become and just love. And so I just feel super, just really super grateful and super, I don't know, I feel, I don't know if blessed is the right word. I'm not sure that's a good word or not, but I just feel very thankful and very, like I've been, you know, given like great people in my life, and so hopefully I'll have the opportunity to have some of them on the show here, and yeah, so I guess we'll hop into things. But before we do, I don't know anything else about myself here. I got some notes here. I make bullet points for the show, so I don't have a script or anything. I just kind of have some ideas to work with, yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to be living in the Pacific Northwest. I think that's the plan. Looks like we got a plane going by. Puerto Escondido Airport is right over there, so please bear with if there's any sounds that are kind of disrupting the video. I know there's a rooster right here, and he's been cock-a-doodle-doing and stuff, so he might appear in the his audio, his vocals might appear in the show as well at some point. But let's see, we got about the other things that I wrote about myself. Hold on. Okay, so I love indigo. I already said that. I like linen, the texture of it and stuff like this. Tennis. I love playing tennis. I love rustic and yet modern architecture. So stuff like, you know, that you see from like Mickey Muning, the architect from Big Sur, California. He's Big Sur was one of my favorite places, by the way. I lived out there for a bit. I lived in a cabin. You could see the water and stuff from up there. It was in Palo Colorado Canyon. I lived in Big Sur, and I just love it out there with the redwoods. I go to the redwoods and I just feel humbled. You know, they're just these big, gigantic trees that are just their energy is just so beautiful. You know, when I look out to the ocean, I get humbled. The ocean inspires me, but it also comforts me. The ocean is like my temple. I love it. Like, I don't know, it's like everything for me. Whenever I'm in a bad mood, I just go to the ocean and it cheers me up. It lets me know everything's going to be okay. I go to the ocean in the middle of the winter time. Like, I just show up, like if I'm like, you know, back home in Massachusetts or something, it could be December, January, no one's on the beach. It's like 2 a.m. I just show up by myself and like, you know, with like my blanket and stuff. And like, I just sit there. I always take my shoes off. Always. That's my rule. When I go onto the beach, I always have my shoes off. And yeah, so I do that even in the wintertime, until my feet get almost frostbitten, and then sometimes I'll put them back on if I have to, but maybe just the socks back on, I don't know. But anyhow, the ocean just really humbles me and inspires me and all this kind of stuff. But the redwoods kind of, for land, the redwoods kind of do that for me. There he is, Señor Rooster. I'm not sure how you say rooster in Spanish. I know pollo is chicken, but hey, hola, Señor Rooster. He's like, "Hola, Ray. I'm here, cockle-doodle-dooling, waking all the people up who have been sleeping on siesta." Okay, so anyhow, yeah. So yeah, redwoods. Yeah, cock-a-doodle-doo. So the redwoods, right? So I'd go to the redwoods, and I just love the redwoods. I just love them. I don't know, they humble me. I sit there. I've had some really beautiful adventures in the redwoods, camping and stuff like that. But yeah, and anyway, so I love Big Sur. I love the redwoods. I love the area, the coast, the way the fog comes off the coast and stuff. That whole general region is great with the wine making and the hippies and the surfers and the tech crowd and all that stuff. I just love it out there. But not the high taxes. I'm not crazy about the high taxes out there. They have to lower some of their regulatory burdens and stuff like that. But that's something for another show. So anyways, yeah, some other stuff about me. Oh, so, yeah, I was talking about the architecture, the Mickey Muning architecture. Yeah, some of the architecture out there is just really cool. It's kind of like modern but rustic, right? It's not like cookie cutter, plasticky, contemporary modern. It's more like kind of like a rustic sort of modern with like, flat surfaces and stuff, but like wooden beams, maybe rustic wooden beams, concrete, metals, things like that. Like I love lofts. I lived in a loft in Dumbo in Brooklyn, in New York, and it was beautiful. It had like the exposed ductwork and the wood beams and the brick and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like, clean spaces, but like with character. And we'll talk more about architecture in other episodes and stuff, but that's something I really love. Like I said, I love playing tennis. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful sport. I love bread. Bread is like one of my favorite things. I eat so much bread. If I'm visiting my mom at home and there's like a loaf of bread there, a lot of times I'll eat the whole loaf in like a day. And she has to she's like, where did all the bread go? And I'm like, I ate it. Cause I'm like a bread monster. That's one of the only things I've ever been addicted to is bread. Bread and sometimes I drink a little too much diet soda as well. Those are the only two things. Those are the only two like addictions. Not addiction. I'm joking, but those are the only two things that maybe I indulged in a little too much over the years there. But I love bread, especially like a nice ciabatta or like a sourdough or like naan bread. I made naan bread once when I was back home, and that was really fun. So. Anyways, I love bread. Minimalist art. Yeah, I love stuff like Mark Rothko and stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah, I like abstract stuff. Traveling. Yeah, I travel a lot. Traveling is really fun for me. Music. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I love, but we'll talk about me. The show is not really about me so much. But I kind of wanted to tell you a few things about me to kind of, I don't know, give you an insight, I suppose. But yeah, traveling is always fun. I love traveling. I feel like when you travel, you kind of, you go into another culture, and culture is just kind of culture is like kind of thinking, but like in mass, right? So it's just kind of like the way that a group thinks, essentially, rather than like say an individual. And for me, it's really fun to experience different cultures, I don't know, just to kind of experience what they're like and see what their perspectives are and things like that. And, so yeah. So anyhow, that's I think enough about old RaRa. Let's talk about a couple other things and then hop into some topics here. So, okay, so I also want to talk about, before we get kind of into things, I also want to talk about the place that I'm at right now. So okay, so I am in Oaxaca, and this is one of my favorite places in Mexico. Like I said, I've lived in Mexico for a while, right? Like last 5 years. I moved out about a year ago, but for about 5 years I had an apartment in Tulum, and it was a really sweet spot. I had like a little rooftop spot, it was pretty cheap too for, compared to the United States. And it was cool though. I had a rooftop and I was right in the jungle, so I could like look out, and it was just me. I mean, my closest neighbor was like a good deal walk away. So it was just me out there, and and there were people underneath, and like there was like an apartment building, right? I had like the rooftop thing, but there were people below as well, so it wasn't just me. But yeah, it was really cool. You look out, and then sometimes in the morning it'd be all misty. You'd look out over the jungle. I got lots of scorpions. What's up, brother? I got lots of scorpions up there too, though. Sometimes, scorpions would climb up. So it was the jungle, But it was beautiful, though. I had like a hammock, and there's a little pool there that I go swimming in, and it was called El Bojongalo. It was bungalow, boho, bungalow, and hongo, which is like mushroom in Spanish. So I think one day I was thinking about psychedelic mushrooms, which here they call hongo psiquidelicos. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to name my place after the bungalow, boho, and hongo. So Bohongalo was the name of my apartment in Tulum, my rooftop pad up there. Yeah, it was really sweet though. I loved working on that up there because I got to use like the elements of Tulum. Tulum is very kind of like bohemian and stuff, and so I made like a lamp with like kind of like a stick, and it was like rope and stuff, and it was just really cool, working with some of the materials there to make kind of like it was like a super bohemian place. I think I have some videos of it on my Instagram, but but anyhow, I moved out of there, yeah, but right now I just kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent there. Sorry, but right now I'm in Oaxaca, and Oaxaca is in the southwest part of Mexico. So this is one of my favorite states in all of Mexico. I haven't been everywhere. I've been to Chiapas. I've been to way up in the northwest, like Rosarito, that city. I don't know. I've been to like San Cristobal and Chiapas, stuff like that. Mexico City, Tulum, Bacalar. You know, I've been to some places in Mexico, but I haven't been everywhere. But so far, Oaxaca is one of my favorites because it's just so cool. It's got so many just awesome things about it. You know, it's got the mountains, which are just magical. You can drive up there and. You know, it's just all misty all the time and really green and kind of rustic. It also has lots of great mezcal palenques that, you know, those are the places that produce mezcal. A lot of mezcal comes from here. Mezcal, by the way, is made with agave. They have some up there, actually. I'll kind of show you in a sec, but they have some mezcal up there that you can buy. And what else? Yeah, and it also has the coast, right? So right now I'm on the coast, and the ocean's right there. These waves are wild. They come in and they just kind of they just crash right down, and they're super strong. If you go up the coast a little bit, there's waves that are a bit more gentle, so you can kind of waves that are a bit better for surfing. They don't break so hard. So it's a great surf spot, and yeah, and it's just a beautiful area altogether. Great food too, cool people, Pacific Coast vibes, you know, lots of surfers, stuff like this. So yeah, it's just a great spot to be. And right now I happen to be right in Puerto Escondido, right? So this is kind of like one of the main towns, city, I guess you can call it a city. I don't know, it's got an airport and stuff. But that's one of the main towns right on the coast here in Oaxaca. A bit further south, you have Mazunte, where I think I'm going to go on Monday. And then you have Zipolite as well. That's another town down there. And yeah, it's just a great spot all around. Up in the mountains, by the way, there's a town called San Jose del Pacifico. And I went there on my birthday a few years ago. And yeah, and that town is known for psychedelic mushrooms, right? So you get into the town and there's just like a bunch of like mushroom statues everywhere. There's like, I don't know, like there's big mushroom statues on the road, and then like the restaurants they all have like mushrooms and stuff, and you can just go and you can buy mushrooms pretty much anywhere you want. You can just walk into like a random shop, like a store that's selling clothes, and be like, ¿Tienes hongos psicodélicos? And they'll be like, sí, señor. And they'll just kind of bring out a bag and be like, here you go. Sometimes they're fresh, sometimes they're dried, depending on the season. But yeah, and sometimes they have shamans and stuff. I don't know. I just take them myself and just gobble them up and go tripping under the stars. My first time there, when I went on my birthday, I saw 4 shooting stars while I was under the influence of psychedelic mushrooms. It was quite the time. But yeah. So, anyways, but we have lots of stories to tell and stuff like that as the podcast goes along. I hope I'm not being too boring. I hope I'm being somewhat interesting. And I know it's funny because as I'm going along right now, I'm making mistakes, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I said that, or I'm kind of like catching myself in things. But I'm just gonna let it rip, right? So I'm gonna just kind of let it roll, mistakes and all. My goal is to just hit like that little record button once, and just let it go. And I'm gonna look back and be like, oh, I wish I said that differently, or I didn't say that quite right, or I blew that one, or I forgot something. That's gonna happen, but I'm just gonna let it happen, and I'm just gonna, because if not, then I'm gonna be like hitting stop and then re-recording it, and then re-recording it a third time, and then and then editing it and all this stuff. I just kind of want to make one video, one take, boom, done, and then upload it, and that's the RaRa, and that way there's not just that way I'm not sitting for days on end editing and doing post-production and stuff like this. But anyways, yeah, and that for me makes it a lot more fun, and plus I think it's going to be a lot more spontaneous. It won't be as polished, and it's going to be polished in a sense, but it won't be it's I think it's kind of nice to have it raw and kind of off the cuff, I guess you can say, from the heart, right? So yeah, so anyhow, I'm in Oaxaca, and in Puerto Escondido, and it's kind of like a surfer beach town here, and and I'm actually kind of at a very specific part of Puerto Escondido. So I'm way at the end, kind of toward the end, and kind of I go toward the most southern part of the town, and this is it's a neighborhood called La Punta. I love this neighborhood. It's one of the coolest surf neighborhoods in the world, on the planet Earth. I mean, I've been to a lot of surf places. I lived out in California, so I know that whole coast pretty well. I've also, been to lots of places like Costa Rica. I've been to Costa Rica probably like 6 or 7 times. I used to go for Envision Festival, and that's right right on the west coast as well. But it's right by Dominical, which is like another surf another surf spot. What is the other one? The Santa Teresa, that's another surf spot over there in Costa Rica. Montezuma is really cool too. That's like a little hippie town. Anyway, so there's lots of cool surf spots in Costa Rica as well. I don't know. I lived in Australia for a little bit. I lived in Byron Bay. That's an amazing surf spot on the East Coast. From Byron, you can see like whales, and you can also see dolphins from there, like from the coast. They have palm trees and pine trees. It's quite the place. I love Byron Bay actually. We'll talk about some of these places I've been to in future episodes, but Byron's really fun though. I went to Byron Bay in Australia kind of on a whim. I was going to buy a ticket to to San Francisco. I went online and I was on I forget what the website. I don't know if they had kayak back then, but I was on one of the websites and I went to go buy a ticket to San Francisco. I was like, all right, I'm going to California. I was in Massachusetts at the time. I was like, I'm going to California, and then I went to go buy a ticket to San Francisco, and I was traveling. This is years back, and I don't, for some reason I searched Sydney, or maybe Sydney came up. I don't know how that worked, but I think I was just browsing around looking at other cities for fun or something, and I saw that the ticket for Sydney was like super cheap. So I was like, I'll go to Sydney. And so I just bought the ticket to Sydney, and then like a couple weeks later, I was in Sydney, and I lived there for a little bit. It wasn't that long, but I had a job there. I worked right in town at a place called Bay Burger, flipping burgers. I had no money at all. That was the brokest. That was the least amount of money I've ever had in my life. I had 1 Australian nickel. That was it. I didn't have anything else in my bank account, nothing. I had 1 Australian nickel, and I was just kind of living. I worked there. I worked at Bay Burger, flipping. I was basically making like burgers and falafels and stuff like this, and I got paid very little. It was like the minimum wage of Australia, whatever that was, $5 an hour, $5.15 an hour or something. And but they let me eat for, I think it was like 30% off or something, which is not really that great of a deal. I don't know. I got a bit of a discount, I guess. But I used to make like a sandwich there every day. Like I'd go in, they'd give you like a shift meal for like 30% off or something. And I'd make this monster like falafel like sandwich. It would be like this tall. Like I remember one time I made it and the owner was like, come on, man, we're giving you like a free, like, a 30% off sandwich, but come on, dude, this is getting ridiculous. Like the thing was like, if I didn't like hold it with 2 hands, it would have like toppled over, and like that's how I ate. I would eat bread and like cheap sandwiches from Bay Burger. But yeah, and that was a fun place. I had some fun times. I lived there at the Arts Factory. It's kind of like a hostel. It's one of the best hostels on the planet. They have like camping and they have like, hostel rooms and stuff, but they also have like, it's on like a little like lake type of thing or a little pond, and they have beach volleyball and like there's a little hot tub, and they also have a little movie theater there with like these like kind of like sofa chairs that are like cow printed. So you can like lay down in the little sofa chairs with your friends with a bunch of pillows and like watch movies. They'd always put on like old movies like Karate Kid or like Goonies or, stuff from the 80s and things like that, these old classic films. So anyways, that was fun living at the Arts Factory. I was living there. They let me stay for free at the Arts Factory. I had a tent, and they let me, I had to work 1 day a week. I had the worst job in the whole place. Like everyone else that was living there at the Arts Factory, and like working at the hostel there, a lot of them would get like, they'd have to work like 3 or 4 nights doing like, I don't know, maybe working at like the front desk or something like this, or maybe like, checking people in, or I don't know, doing anything, going into the rooms and fixing the beds or something. My job was taking out the trash. I had to work 1 day a week, but it was the worst possible day. It was like Saturday morning at like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or something. I had to go take out all the trashes from like the entire hostel, which was terrible. I mean, I wore gloves and stuff. It wasn't that bad, but it was a stinky job, and but I only had to do it once a week though. So trash duty was just on Saturdays. So that was it. I was living in the Arts Factory in Australia, with virtually no money. They didn't pay me or anything, so the only money I got was from Bay Burger under the table. So anyways, but yeah, so I forgot how I got on that tangent. Oh, I was talking about surf towns. So yeah, so I've been to a fair amount of surf towns. I've been to other surf towns in Europe and things like that, and Biarritz in France and things like that, and Rincon and Puerto Rico. I don't know. There's a lot of them that are excellent all around the world, but This is one of the coolest ones. Like La Punta, this neighborhood specifically, is just so cool. There's just dirt roads everywhere, and there's lots of hippie vans. I mean, there's tons of hippie vans. I've seen a bunch of them, you know, like the Volkswagen buses. Lots of surfers and stuff. Lots of, like, you know, everyone's got dogs. There's lots of little cafes and things like that. Really good beer. Mezcal. The mezcal is everywhere because, you know, mezcal is huge here. It's where Oaxaca is known for mezcal. So that's all around as well. And yeah, lots of good surfing and stuff. Right down the beach here, there's actually a cove that I love. I used to go there. Last time I was here, I went there, and I just go by myself and kind of just sit there and kind of almost meditate by myself. See the sunset and things like that. But yeah, you just kind of go to the end of the beach and go up a little trail and then come down the other end, and there's like this desolate cove that is just so cool. But so anyways, I love this little neighborhood. It's just such a cool, very special place to be in. So I'm just here for about 5-6 days or something, visited my buddy Marcelo. But it's a really cool place to be, and I'm definitely stoked to be filming our first episode from here. So yeah, yeah. Let me show you this little spot too, where I'm at. Hopefully, I can put the camera back to its original position, or mostly its original position. But let me kind of pan around a little bit here. I feel like I'm gonna look back at this video and be like, "Yep, I messed up that. I forgot that. Oh, I didn't say this. I didn't say that." But I think it's mostly. I think our first episode is mostly going okay though so far. So I feel a bit nervous, by the way. I feel totally kind of like. It's kind of scary to get out there, to be honest, to kind of show myself, and I feel like I'll get some criticism and people are gonna like make fun of me and like say, "Oh, that was terrible," and they're not gonna like my opinions and stuff. But you know, but here I am, and I'm nervous. I think in future episodes I'm gonna calm down a little bit, and I won't be as like, I don't know. I feel like I'll just be a little more chill, perhaps. But yeah. So, anyways, check out this place. It's called Paraíso. It's paradise in Spanish. Paraíso Escondido. So here it is. So here it is. There's some mezcal back there. They have bottles of mezcal. I won't take the whole thing because I don't want to disconnect it from the mic. But whatever. Let's take it. Come on. We can just walk with it. Let's see. Hold on. I'll give you a little tour of the spot here. All right. So we're on the road here. Now we're really on the road. Okay. So okay. So check out the spot here. Hola, Señor Rooster. There he is. Can you see the rooster there? Okay. We got some coconuts. There's some coconuts there. There's some mezcals. So these are all the different kinds of mezcal. So each mezcal is made with lots of different kinds of agave. So these are all different agaves. Some of them, like espadín, that's grown. That's a lot of times that's just kind of grown, kind of like cultivated. Hopefully the audio's okay. But yeah, there's like tubala, coyote. There's lots of different ones. But these are all mezcals. And yeah, there's some coconuts down here. Let's see where else. We got some salsa picante. Some other mezcals. Ooh, hongo psicodélico. And yeah, so it's just a really sweet spot. We got un perrito. And yeah, so it's just a cool spot. We got a hammock over there, some birds, and then over here we got the coast, right? So, okay, hopefully the audio's okay. Yeah, we got the coast. That's the beach down there. Yeah, there's like, well, the cove is way at the end over there. I don't know if you can see those cliffs or not, but there's a lighthouse at the end, and there's there's a big cove and stuff like that. So this place is gorgeous. We came here the other night. I've been coming here almost every day down to the beach to watch the sunset and stuff. But all right, so here we are. Hopefully that worked. I don't know. This is my first time doing this, so hopefully you can still hear me. Hopefully nothing cut out. Hopefully the audio and the video is all right. But yeah, that's it. That's Puerto Escondido in Oaxaca, Mexico. Sorry, it's not a more professional shot of the beach here, but yeah, we're getting a little visual, I guess. You know, that was kind of part of the show that I was interested in. I was like, yeah, if I film this thing, I want to show where I'm at. Like, I want to show the places that I'm traveling to. I don't want to just be sitting in a room somewhere, you know, like being like, hey, my name is Ray. There's a white wall behind me. That's boring. Like, I kind of wanted to show like more interesting things. But who knows? I mean, if I look back and the audio's terrible because of the wind and this and that, then maybe we'll have to keep things indoors. I don't know. But either way, wherever I happen to be, I'm gonna talk about the spot, right? So I'm gonna try to introduce it, tell you about where I am, and hopefully maybe give you some visuals and things like this. Hopefully that was all right. I don't know. I kind of tried to show you this little this little sweet little bungalow spot here. But this place is cool at night too, by the way. Lots of people come. Right now it's kind of empty because it's early in the day. But last night I was here and there were lots of people here. You know, they watch the sunset. They play some music. I think sometimes there's some live music and stuff too. So they stay open late. They open early too. They open at like 6 a.m. And I think they stay open pretty late. So let's check the audio level here. Okay, can you still hear me? We good? We good? Todo bien? Todo bien. Todo bien is like my favorite saying in the world. It's like, it means all good. I say it all the time. I say it to like cab drivers. I'm like, hola amigo, todo bien? Todo bien. Todo bien, RaRa, todo bien. So anyway, so I'm in Oaxaca. I think with Marcelo we'll go down to Mazunte, which is another really cool little beach town, even smaller than Puerto Escondido. It's a tiny, but it's great. It's really cool. Awesome mountains in the distance there, and lots of just dirt roads everywhere, Jeeps everywhere, surfboards as far as the eye can see. Everyone's got surfboards, you know. Everyone's got a scruffy looking dog. Mazunte is super cool. Stars are beautiful because there's very little light, light out there and stuff from the city and stuff. So anyways, so Oaxaca is a beautiful spot, and I'm honored to have my first episode from here. So that's a little bit about where I am. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out here. No, I don't think so. I think I've mostly hit most of the stuff here. Looking at my bullet points here. Okay, so let's talk about some topics, right? So I talked a bit about me, a little bit about Oaxaca and Puerto Escondido. Let's get that right. Okay, that looks good. And now let's talk a little bit about, and I also kind of introduced the podcast a little bit. It's a weekly show on Fridays. On Fridays, every day. I don't know what time. Hopefully cock-a-doodle-doo, baby. I think I'm gonna hopefully be uploading it. My goal is to I'm kind of aiming for like 4 p.m. upload time on Fridays. You know, get the getting out of work crowd, but getting ready for the weekend kind of vibe. You know, kind of like a recap for the week type of thing. I was gonna do Thursdays actually. But with one of my businesses, I already planned something for Thursday night. So I said, oh, all right, well, Friday it is. And then I thought, Friday's actually better in a way because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like low vibe. It's like good vibes, it's like low, kind of chill. It's like Friday, everyone's like in a good mood. So I think Fridays will be a good day to get the show out. But okay. All right, so let's talk about some topics now. So that's, I guess, the show's intro. And yeah, if I'm talking too fast or if the audio's bad or if the video's bad, well, hopefully episode number 2 we'll have all that stuff fixed. So if there's bad stuff, please bear with. Please don't lose faith in the RaRa until episode 2 comes out, because there could be some fast improvements then. Okay, so a couple of things that I wanted to talk about as far as like topics go. Okay, before we get into some of the topics, I want to make a quick disclaimer too. I want to mention that my views have changed over time. So as I've gone along throughout my life, throughout this journey, I've had different views, right? So I mean, I've thought in lots of different ways. I've been kind of like a hippie guy. I've been like a surfer guy. I've been like an entrepreneurial type. Like, I don't know. I've done different things and thought in different ways. I've lived in lots of different places, and so my perspectives have changed throughout my life, and politically, economically, and just personally, like in life, I've just looked at things differently. And I imagine that's going to continue, right? So things that I say, perspectives that I have, opinions that I have, ideas that I have, they are like a snapshot in time. And, and my opinions can change. And one of the things about me is I strive to kind of find a better perspective, even if that better perspective isn't, what I'm thinking right now. So I'm very quick to be like, if I find that something's not right or not working or not really beneficial for me or for the world or something, I'm very quick to be like, all right, well, let's change it and let's think in a different way or do things differently. And so some of the stuff that I think now, I might not think in a year or 5 years or even in 5 weeks from now. So, I mean, some of the things are going to be like, pretty set. I feel like I'm pretty strongly about these. Some of these things I'm going to feel pretty strongly about and feel very solid and kind of like, okay, like that's kind of how I feel. And I kind of in some ways doubt that some things might change. Like in some ways I think I might be like, thinking some perspectives from now until forever. But some things I might change my mind on and stuff like that. So I want to kind of put that disclaimer out there. Like not every single thing I say is is going to be something that I think forever. And, I'm sure I'll make mistakes. I'm sure I'll be wrong about things. I'm sure that I'll look back in a few years and be like, oh, I was totally off about this thing over here or that over there. And so I kind of wanted to say that, and with some humility, and just know that I'm like on a journey of discovery myself, and I'm learning things, and I'm growing, I'm evolving, and, I'm maturing and always hoping to gain a bit of a better perspective, a bit of a stronger way, a bit of a better way, a bit of a more solid viewpoint. And so yeah, some of the stuff that we talk about, these are my perspectives right now. They may change, and I might make mistakes, get things wrong. And if that happens, hopefully I'll, if I realize that I got something wrong, I'll be the first to be like, yeah, I got that wrong. I'll correct it best I can. But yeah, so take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. And as we go forward, yeah. So right. So let's hop into some issues here. So some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about are going to be like, topics that are just kind of fun, like beer brewing or sailing the ocean or architecture or, I don't know, fun convertibles to drive or tennis or I don't know, just different things that are kind of cool. But some of the stuff that we're going to talk about might be a bit controversial, right? Like we might be going into some political issues, which I feel is inevitable, right? I mean, that's kind of what's relevant right now is some of the stuff that's happening in the news, some of the things that are going on in the world and in the U.S. Like these are the types of things that, that are important in our lives because they affect us. And we don't live in bubbles. We live in a community that's, so things that happen in the world are affecting us. And so it's kind of interesting to talk about those things and to see different perspectives about those things. When I do talk about those types of things, I'm going to try to do so from my own unique perspective. I'm going to try to, not have like such a cookie cutter right-wing narrative or not have such a cookie-cutter left-wing narrative, because right now I feel like when you put on the news, a lot of times you'll get a story, whether it be like kind of a left-leaning media outlet or a right-leaning media outlet. You might, you kind of get like a different version of reality depending on what you're watching or what kind of news you're taking in, right? If you're watching leftist news, then, everything is kind of painted in that light. If you're watching right-wing type of news, then they're going to tell the same kind of, they're talking about the same reality, but from a very different perspective. And so, so you're getting kind of almost like two sets of reality, meeting each other or confronting each other in the United States and in other countries too. There's kind of the two main political and economic, I guess you could say, mentalities or philosophies, I guess, would be left and right, on the political and economic spectrum. We'll talk about that stuff more as we go along, but I think though that what I'm going to try to do with the show is I'm going to try to give things from my own perspective, and that where I come from is the way that I think about politics and economics and stuff like that is. So I've had a unique journey, and I feel like we'll talk about my journey in future episodes and stuff. I kind of came into politics, and I was very libertarian when I came into politics. What libertarianism means is basically we want liberty. Libertarians want as much liberty as possible for the individual, and they want the government to basically do the functions that the functions that are really important, like building infrastructure, roads and bridges, things like that. Having like security, with like police and military, a court system. And that's kind of like those are kind of like some of the main things. Maybe there's some other stuff too, like delivering the mail, you could have public schools, I don't know, just basic functions of a government, I guess. Providing infrastructure for food, for water and electricity, and not necessarily owning the companies, but providing the grid, the layout, or the structure so that companies can operate and provide those services. But anyhow, libertarianism is kind of like the least amount of government with still keeping the government relevant and still doing all the government things that you need to do, but having the government play very little role in other stuff. And so anyhow, so I kind of started with that sort of mindset, like very little government interference, very low taxes, very little government infringement on your personal freedoms and things like that, and just more and more, I guess, power, more liberty for the individual themselves. It's very individual based. So anyhow, that's kind of how I started in politics, as kind of like a libertarian, I guess. And then a bit later on, I kind of moved further to the left because I thought, at some point I figured the United States should be going a bit further left. I looked at things like healthcare and stuff, and I thought, yeah, everyone should be having healthcare that should be provided for everyone. And so I kind of started moving to the left a bit on the political spectrum. And it was funny. I kind of went kind of far left for a little while. I was like a big Bernie Sanders supporter, who's really not Bernie. I met Bernie once. My sister was actually the treasurer for Bernie Sanders. So my sister, on paper, she's the treasurer, right? So she was on paper in control of like whatever the $100 million dollars that came in. It was like record-breaking grassroots donations. It was crazy because Bernie was Bernie Sanders is a senator from Vermont, and my sister was working at some sort of compliance company, and they asked her to be the treasurer for Bernie, right? And so it was a wild thing because when a presidential candidate wants to be a candidate for the presidency, I guess, there's two forms that they have to fill out. I believe it's a statement of candidacy, and I think, if I might be getting this a bit wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a statement of candidacy, and then there's a second form that's a statement of organization, and I forget which one's which, but maybe it's a statement of candidacy. I think just the presidential candidate signs. So for example, if like Barack Obama or if like Barack Obama or Ronald Reagan or anyone, Trump, Clinton, whoever wants to be president, then they fill that out, right? They sign it, they put their address, they put their name, and all that kind of stuff. That's a statement of candidacy. I think I'm getting this right. And then the statement of organization is a little bit different. So that one is when they are saying to the government that they're going to organize or they're going to file to organize a political campaign. An organization. I believe that's what it's for. And on that one, the presidential candidate, again, they sign it again. That's the second form. Remember, there's a president statement of candidacy and there's a statement of organization. Only the candidate signs the statement of candidacy, but the statement of organization, I could have these reversed, but the statement of organization, I believe the candidate signs that one. And then there's a second person that signs that one too. The second person that signs the statement of organization, aside from the candidate themselves, is the treasurer of their campaign. And so in the case of Bernie Sanders, Bernie signed the statement of candidacy, like all the presidential candidates would, and for the statement of organization, Bernie signed that one as well. And guess who the second person that signed it was? It was my sister. She signed it. It was so cool. I was like, whoa! My sister is signing this big document. So when she signed the statement of organization for Bernie, when her little when the pen left the piece of paper there, when that little ink, when the little molecule of ink left the little molecule of carbon paper, that exact precise moment in time is when Bernie Sanders' campaign became official on behalf of the United States federal government, and it was my little sister that signed it, and so I like to say that a Larkin sparked the burn. So yeah, because Bernie Sanders, the burn, we used to say, feel the burn, feel the burn. Well, a Larkin sparked the burn, baby. So I always was very proud about that. I thought that was really cool. So I was kind of on the far left, I was like, yeah, like let's have like universal health care and let's do all the stuff. Let's have all the things that are far left. I was all about it, and I would go to rallies. I do all the stuff, and that's how I thought for a few years. I've not a few years, more than a few years. It was for a bit of time, probably 10 years, más o menos, we say in Spanish. I'm speaking a little bit of Spanish right now. Más o menos is more or less. More or less, I was far left for, I don't know, I'm kind of guessing right now, but I would say 7 to 12 years, somewhere in that range. I'd have to do some math and stuff to figure it out. But I was a decent amount of time. I was kind of far left in my political outlook and stuff. By the way, I've been speaking some Spanish here. My friends that are here, Marcelo and some of my other friends, they all speak Spanish, and so I'm learning Spanish. And so with them, I've been trying to only speak Spanish, and it's going okay. Like I speak Spanish. It's a little bit butchered, but I can communicate. Like I can hang out with people all day long and just speak Spanish, but I'm just kind of like getting used to the future tense and the past tense and stuff. But I'm kind of getting there, I think in some time I'm gonna be pretty good. I can read Spanish pretty well. I can understand for the most part what I'm reading. I don't know all the words, but conozco mucho hablas. Sí, no mucho, pero I'm getting there. Yeah, sí, casi listo. And so anyways, yeah, so I was kind of like far leftish, I guess you could say, and I was, big into Obama and stuff like that. I went to the Obama inauguration. Not the official inauguration, but I was there, like, watching him get sworn in and stuff. And I went to D.C. for that. My sister, she was in D.C. and I went there and like I saw these. I went to Obama's inauguration, which I guess was in the cold. I guess that would be in January, right? And so I went there, and it was a beautiful scene. I went on I remember the most beautiful moment about seeing Obama get sworn in. I went to I was going to the inauguration. I flew in. I was in Argentina. I think I was in Buenos Aires. And I was there for like a few weeks, visiting some friends and stuff, staying in hostels, traveling around with a backpack. And the Obama got elected, and I was like, at that time in my life, I was kind of like on the left and stuff. And so I thought Obama's getting elected, and my sister lived in D.C., and she was like, yeah, just come, you can stay at my house, and like we'll go to the inauguration, And so I said, yeah, let's do it. And so I flew into D.C. like the night before. I was backpacking and stuff. I wasn't like jet setting. I probably got like the cheapest seat on the plane, sitting in the middle aisle and stuff. But like, so I went to go there, and anyways, we woke up early, early in the morning, and we got on the DC subway the DC Metro or whatever to go to the Capitol or whatever it was. I forget. I think it was in the what do they call it? The National Mall or whatever there where the monument is. Anyways, we went to go see the inauguration, and it was really a beautiful scene. There were people crying and stuff, and it was just a beautiful event. But I don't. By the way, for the record, I don't support a lot of the policies now at this point in my life. Like now that I've learned more about how some of the stuff works, a lot of the policies I don't agree with now. But at that time, I was really into it. But anyways, yeah. One of the coolest parts about the inauguration was me and my sister went on the metro to get there, and we got on the metro on the train, and there were all these older black women, and they were dressed like in like their Sunday finest. They were wearing like just their best, most favorite outfit. And we got onto the train, and you could just feel on the train this sense of overwhelming pride that these older black women had. I don't mean older like elderly, but in their 50s and 60s, people who had grown up and not having hadn't yet seen a black president, in their lifetimes and stuff. Regardless of policy, I'm not talking about policy, who's right or wrong with specific things about healthcare or taxes or education policy, all that stuff aside. Just talking about from a sheer, just kind of like sociological, cultural perspective. Just kind of like a American perspective, to be on that train and to kind of feel that energy and see the look on those women's faces when they were there, dressed up as in their best outfits, wearing their most favorite hat, on the train, on the way, en route to go to inauguration, to go see the first African American president sworn in. The look on their faces, and just the feeling of pride that you could kind of just see the stoic sort of like, wow, like, yeah, like we're doing it. Like we did something of great accomplishment. Again, regardless of whether or not you like Obama's policies, it was just a beautiful moment. And I could see that some of them had tears in their eyes. Like on the train, I could see that these older black women, just stoic, kind of just looking like they had accomplished, like they had done something grand. Seeing tears come from their eyes as we were on the train, because they were just so happy and just so proud, was just such a moment. And I thought that he is just a very inspirational figure for a lot of people, and so like I said, so I've kind of been on the left a bit. And I've kind of been, I guess, in the middle. I've been a libertarian, and I have some right-leaning policies when it comes to like economics and things like this. And so I've kind of had different parts of my life that, hola. I've had different parts of my life that, maybe he'll come back. I'm saying hi to a dog over here, but he kind of ran away. I think they're giving him some food or something. Maybe I'll try to get a treat for him. But so anyways, I've had different perspectives throughout my life, and right now the way that I look at things now is I'm kind of back to more of a libertarian type of thing. And so I guess you could call that being on the right. I don't know. I feel like that can be used as like a almost like a bad thing. Like people are saying, oh, you're left wing, you're right wing, and sometimes when people say right wing, they they mean like a right nationalist, or it gets conflated with racism, and I don't know. There's lots of stuff that being on the right can be associated with, but I wouldn't say that I'm on the right or I'm on the left. Actually, I'm just my own. I'm me, and some of my views might be similar to those on the left. Some of my views might be similar to those on the right, but I'm not right wing. I'm not left wing. I'm just Ray, and I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm an independent voter. I've always been an independent. I've never registered as a Democrat. I never registered as a Republican. Now a lot of my views, economically especially, they kind of, I guess, would be more right-leaning, I guess you could say, because I generally like lower taxes. I like less government intervention in our lives, and I like government to, I don't know, be responsible. I want it to be transparent. I want it to be accountable to the people. I think sometimes now on the left you have a government that's doing a bit more than it should. People are paying a lot of money in taxes. I know in a lot of places, in the United States, if you make a certain amount, a lot of your money, like after everything's said and done with your income tax, your sales tax, your excise tax, your property tax, your state income tax, along with your federal, and all kinds of other taxes. I mean, you stay at a hotel, you get a hotel tax. You stay, you do this, you get this gasoline tax. There's a tax on almost everything you do. And, with all your taxes put together, I mean, a lot of people are paying like well over 30%. A lot of it's 40, maybe 50%. It's like half your money is going to the government. And for what? I mean, a lot of times they waste it. A lot of times they don't spend it wisely. A lot of times your money goes to the government and, they waste it on nonsense. They go and they, start some kind of nefarious, some sort of, conflict overseas that probably shouldn't be started. That's long term going to get the U.S. in more trouble than it's worth. And a lot of those wars are corrupt and done for corrupt purposes. Or the government might take your money and they might spend it on projects that are just not useful. A lot of times when you give the government money, it's almost like putting it into a wood chipper. It's like putting $1 into a wood chipper. You put $1 in and like the thing gets chopped up, you get 5 cents back. And it's kind of how the government is sometimes. Like when I was back when I was on the left, I didn't know this stuff. I thought the government was just this altruistic, good guy that was going to like stop the bad businesses from doing bad stuff, which it partially does that, actually. The government does have some good regulations. By the way, I look at it almost like I look at the government and businesses and stuff. It's kind of like being like a football game, like the NFL, right? Like you need the players. Those are the businesses. Those are the people that are creating things. But those are the people that are selling things, right, for people to consume, which, the only way somebody wants something is if it's valuable. The only way someone pays something for it, pays money for something, is if they get value in it. If they find that something is worth it to them for them to give their money to. So, so these businesses that are making things, they're making things because people want them, and the people give them money for compensation. But I look at the government as kind of being like the NFL a little bit, like the economy is being a bit like the NFL. Like you have the players, which are like the businesses; those are the entities making the things. But then you also have the government, and that's almost like the referees, right? And I look at like the referees are the people that are saying, hey, to the players, they're saying, hey, don't throw a foul, don't do a foul, or don't go out of bounds, or don't, do bad stuff, or else you're going to get penalized. We're going to blow the whistle, and we're going to set you back a few yards or whatever else. And so, and that keeps the game in line, right? Because if you just had players and there were no referees in a football game, then it would be pandemonium. It would be like an anarchy, right? The players would be running every which way, and no one would know like what the score was, or who was out of bounds, or who wasn't out of bounds, or if it was a foul, or if it wasn't a foul. So you need the referees to keep order. You need them to call the balls and strikes. You need them to say to the players, like, okay, you did a good thing, you did a bad thing, and so on and so forth. I look at the government as being like that. The government, it has a regulatory responsibility where it needs to say to the businesses, okay, you did something bad, you polluted in the river, so we're going to give you a penalty, and now you can't do it again, and stuff like this, right? You need to have a regulatory law structure there, so the businesses are not doing shady stuff and causing trouble. And so I kind of look at it like that, but I feel like sometimes the government gets a little over burdensome, right? And you have too many refs on the field, and they're blowing whistles every chance they get, and then the players can't play. Right now, it's over-regulated, it's overburdened. you want referees on the field blowing whistles and stuff, but you don't want 100 referees. You don't want more referees than you have players, because then at that point you don't really have a game anymore. You just have a bunch of referees blowing whistles, and it's no fun. And businesses suffer because of that. Legitimate businesses that are trying to do good things suffer because of that. And so going back to the taxes and stuff, I feel like sometimes you give your money to the government, and it's like a big bureaucratic thing, right? So you give it $1,000, and then that $1,000 goes to one office, then another office, then it goes here, then it goes there, and and by the time it's wiggles its way through the system, it comes out actually spend like that $1,000 is now a lot less when it actually goes to the purpose that it's intended for. And I think a lot of times too, you have politicians, their campaigns. A lot of times politicians are a lot of their time, like if you go to Congress and stuff, you'll see that a lot of politicians, they spend much of their time fundraising, right? So they're basically going to lobbyists and to business interests and stuff, and they're asking for money for their campaigns. And so, I mean, what does that money buy, right? I mean, when a business interest, let's say a corporation gives money to a politician, that politician takes that money and says, okay, I'm going to use that for my campaign to get elected. Well, now there's a very strong incentive for that politician to do something beneficial for that business. And that's not, I'm not saying that in itself is a bad thing, because in a way that's democracy. That's someone that's paying I mean, it's giving money. In a way, money is speech in a sense. You're giving your money, and anyone can do that. It's not like just the corporation can do that. Anyone can give money to a politician and say, hey, carry out the stuff that I want, and so you can kind of, I don't say buy politicians, but you can influence politicians by funding their campaigns. I'm not saying that's good or bad or not. What I'm saying is that what you have in the system, the way it's working right now, is you have a lot of interest giving money to these politicians, and the politicians wind up, trying to, give benefits back to that entity, that business, or whoever gave them that money to fund their campaign. And when the taxpayer pays money into the government, a lot of times the politicians will take that money and they'll give it to whatever interest paid for their political campaign. And that's where the problem comes in. So a lot of times the money is getting spent, the taxpayer money is getting spent in ways that it shouldn't be. And when I was back when I was on the left, I didn't really think about that so much. I was more just kind of, thinking that people should, the government should be providing more services, because when I was on the left, I kind of looked at it as if we have a wealth disparity, right? Where you have some people that are very wealthy and you have other people that are not very wealthy. And I thought that the government's role was to redistribute the wealth. It was to take money from the people on the top and give it to the people on the bottom. And that's kind of why I was mostly on the left, right? I thought, in a country that's so rich like the United States, why do we have poor people? Why do we have rich people? Like, why don't we all just kind of pool our money and all be better off for it? And in a way, that's kind of happening now anyways. I mean, if you look at the top earners and stuff, I think the top 1% of people pay, or I think, let's say the top, I think it's like the top 10% of earners or something pay like 80% of the tax bills in the country or something like this. I forget the exact numbers, but the top earners pay the vast majority of the taxes now. So we already kind of have a system that's kind of a little bit like that. You have the top earners paying the most. And if you look at like the bottom earners, like if you look at the bottom 50% of the country, the bottom 50% of the earners, like the more poor people, the bottom 50 doesn't pay almost any taxes at all. I think it's like 0 to 4% of the actual taxes that go into the system come from the bottom 50%. So the bottom 50% are actually paying very little, but they're getting a lot more. They're getting a lot of services, a lot of healthcare and things like that that they're not paying for. But there's a lot of systemic issues underlying a lot of these things. Now I'm talking about how it is now, and that's not a good thing that it's like that. But there are underlying systemic issues that make those situation a reality, right? And it's fixing the underlying things that's going to fix it. It's not taxing the rich a bit more and making them pay a few more percentage points or something in their taxes that's going to fix everything. We have to kind of do it from the ground up and fix the whole system from the roots systemically, rather than try to say, oh, let's just tax them a little bit more, which I kind of thought when I was on the left and stuff, I kind of thought that was the answer, but that's not the answer. When you tax more, people just leave your jurisdiction. I mean, look at what's happening in California. I mean, California has like super high taxes, I think it's like 11 or 13% state tax. That's on top of your federal tax. That's like anywhere between like 30 to like 38% or something like that. So you're putting all these taxes on everyone, and you got your property tax and everything else. next thing, people are just going to start leaving, right? And so people that are in California are now leaving for lower tax states. And I think some of these taxes are just unethical as well. I think like having a property tax is unethical. I mean, a property tax is basically rent. I mean, if you own property and you have to pay tax on it in order to keep it, then you don't own it. You're renting it from the government. If you don't pay your tax bill and the government can just come and take it away, then that's not ownership. Like, you don't own it at that point. You're simply a renter of the government. And so I think I'm very against property taxes. So some of these things, and I know they help to pay for local things like schools and stuff, but I feel we can find better ways to carry out those functions rather than charging someone for property that they own. And so there's some of these things like that kind of put me back into like the libertarian camp, much more so than being on the left. I think that we should have vastly lower taxes for everyone, not higher. I think that we should have like a 7% flat tax for everyone. And everyone, poor, rich, everybody pays the same. That way you don't have, these class battles of saying, the poor people saying, hey, let's charge the rich more, and then the rich people saying, no, let's charge the poor more, and all this kind of stuff. Let's all just pay a flat tax. 7%, that's it. And including everything, including your sales, your excise, your property. I think the government shouldn't take any more than 7% of your money, period. And that way you get to keep 93% thereabouts of your own money. And imagine if everyone got to have a lot more of their own money. You'd have a lot more savings, which would allow for a lot more investment in projects that are actually needed. You'd have a lot less waste, like a lot of this government, you give the government money and they wind up spending it on all kinds of nonsense. You have a lot less of that. And we would just have a much more efficient system that wasn't so corrupt and so bought out by these big companies and things like that. So anyhow, I've shifted. I am no longer on the left. I'm no longer on the far left. I don't know. I guess you could say that I'm on the right. I don't like saying that because I feel like it has connotations that, like, I don't know. I don't know. So I'm kind of libertarian style, but I'm libertarian in a way where I'm not like a full-on libertarian, because I feel like full-on libertarianism requires you to be maybe a bit unreasonable sometimes. Like, full-on libertarianism is like the government shouldn't have any kind of say in almost anything. Like, they should have very minimal regulations. For example, like full-on libertarianism might say people could like, do you have exit signs in bars, like, or restaurants and stuff? Do you have like illuminated exit signs? Full-on libertarians might say, a lot of them would say yes, it's a safety issue. You should have the government, providing safety and stuff. So some would say yes. Others might say no. Another more nuanced one would be like smoking in bars. Should a bar allow smoking? All right. Now, a lot of libertarians, like full-on libertarians, would say no. They would say you let the bar decide, because that's private property and the government shouldn't be dictating on what people do in their private lives and their private property, things like that. And so full-on libertarians might say, yeah, we shouldn't have any kind of smoking bans. The government shouldn't be involved in that kind of thing. It should let people be free. But I'd push back on that, and I would say a bar is a de facto public place. And, in some places you only have one bar, or in some places you might have 3 bars, but if two of them are allowing smoking, then the other one might have to too. And, and at that point, I don't really find it to be like a democratic issue. I find it to be kind of like a personal, like the air that you breathe is your freedom as well. And you want to have clean, fresh air. You don't want to have, if you go out for a drink and stuff, you don't want to have to be polluted by others, doing things that you don't like. And so I do think that there's a role for government to play in setting some regulations and rules and things like that may be slightly more than like a full-on hardcore libertarian might say. So I'm libertarian in a sense, but I'm like I wouldn't call myself a full-on libertarian. I don't even know if I call myself a libertarian. I subscribe to some libertarian views, but I'm just me. I'm not on the right. I'm not libertarian. I'm not left. I'm not any of these labels. I'm just me. And some of my views might align with some of those things, but I'm not a libertarian. I'm not and I'm not a leftist. I'm not I'm not any of these things. I'm not any of these isms that have like a specific point, a specific way of looking at things, and you have to look at things in that box, and you can't paint outside the lines. That's an ism. There's lots of isms out there. I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a but, and maybe they play a role, and maybe they're good, and maybe some of them have lots of value and stuff, but I feel like you're also a lot of times painting yourself into a corner, and you're only allowed to see things through a certain perspective. And so another critique I'd have of libertarianism, even though like 90% of my views align with libertarianism, another critique I'd have about hardcore libertarianism would be a place like St. Bart's, right? Like St. Bartholomew is an island in the Caribbean, and it's a French territory, beautiful place. By the way, they have 0 taxes. There's 0 property tax. I think you pay a small tax when you buy a property, but after that, there's no property tax, and there's no income tax either. So if you live in St. Bart's, if you have your residency there, you don't pay any tax at all. No property, no income. They probably have other taxes. I don't know what their other I don't know. They might have a VAT tax or a sales tax. I'm not sure, but some of the big ones you don't pay. And it's a beautiful place. It's one of the nicest islands in the Caribbean. I went there a few years back, and I want to go there much more though. And that's the place where you see a lot of the yachts in the wintertime. These people pull their yachts in and stuff. And anyways, St. Bart's, though, yeah, while it has no taxes and stuff, very little taxes, it does have some rules. Like, for example, you can't build a structure. I don't know if I have this exactly right, but I think you can't build a structure over the tree line or something. I could have that wrong. I might have that fact wrong, but I'm pretty sure on St. Bart's they have a rule where you can't build over a certain height of your building. And there's that kind of rule exists in lots of places, but in St. Bart's, I think that's a thing. I'm pretty sure I could have that wrong, but I think and libertarian. If you're a full-on libertarian, and you'd say to St. Bart's, you say, hey, the government can't decide that. The individual decides that. Like if you buy a piece of land in St. Bart's, you should be able to build whatever you want. Like I don't care if you build, the rocket ship launcher, or I don't care if you build the world's largest tower. Like you should be able to do it. It's your property. But I would push back on that, and I'd say I think that jurisdictions should allow to say, like in a case like St. Bart's, they should allow, it's a small island, I think that they should say, okay, if we don't want to have big structures, if we don't want to have, big giant condominiums and everything else ruining the landscape and looking like total eyesores, if we don't want to have that stuff, we're not going to have it. And we're just going to have cute little bungalows and little villas and things like that are very tasteful and look nice and don't, make the island look all goofy with lots of big ugly apartment complexes and condos and stuff that are just eyesores really. And so if the island says that, if the government of the island says that, then libertarians would be against that. But I'm for that. I think St. Bart's should be St. Bart's, and I think if people I don't want big buildings there. I might live there. I might have a property there someday, and I think it's nice. And so there are some things about libertarianism that I don't fully agree with. But like I said, 90% of it I do. Like my main values here in politics would be, I want liberty first and foremost. Like I think we should have as much personal liberty as possible. I think that all human beings should be as free as they can possibly be. You should have the government infringing as least possible into your life, and I think that is essential. I think that you should be able to say whatever you want to say with freedom of speech. You should be able to put whatever you want into your body. I think freedom of consumption is huge. I think freedom of consumption, by the way, is one of the rights, one of the freedoms that people sometimes don't, look at, and they don't really realize that it's a big important thing. But for me, it's huge. I think whatever you put in your body is sacred. Like you can't have the government dictating what you can put in your own body. Now, I'm not saying that, if someone puts what I'm really talking about is like substances, right? Like psychedelics, any kind of substance. If you want to put something in your body and you find that to be good and you like it or whatever, then you should have at it. You should do it. You should be able to do it. I'm not advocating illicit drug use, by the way. I'm not saying to go do something illegal, but what I'm saying is you should be able to do that. No government should stop you. No government should be, no authoritarian figure or president or prime minister or king or anyone else should be, or queen or whoever, should be saying, like, you can, as a private citizen, as an individual human being, can or cannot put this or that into your body. The only one who should decide that is you. And it's your body, and it's your mind, it's your choice. And you're not, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. Now, if you're, taking a substance and doing something bad, if you're taking a substance and driving, obviously that should be illegal. You're endangering others. Or if it's something like, some sort of, what do they call it, like an epidemic, like where people are, lots of people are getting sick, or if it's like become a huge problem in society, then yeah, I think the government should probably step in and take measures to stop that. But I don't think people should be getting arrested or getting in trouble for putting things in their body. And I think a lot of these things like hongo psychedelicos and stuff like that are very important, and they're actually very spiritual, and they can lead to great discoveries and great revelations in one's life. And so it can be very helpful in your life. And so I don't think that the government should say, no, you can't do psychedelics or something like that. I think you should be allowed to. And I think, like I said, I think we should be as free as we can possibly be within reason, as long as we're not hurting others. That's kind of like, the whole thing, right? Like the golden rule, like do unto others, right? Like treat others as you want to be treated. But I think in politics, I feel that you should be as free as you can possibly be, so long as you're not hurting others in any kind of significant way. And that's kind of my outlook on that. So liberty is kind of like first and foremost, and then I think we should be caring. And, I think we should really care about the environment. I think we should care about each other. I think we should make sure that everyone is educated, and we have to have a system that allows for the most amount of people to have good health care. I don't think that the government should be providing the health care, because I think, like I said, I think the government's very inefficient. You give it money, it winds up getting wasted, and they do nefarious things, and they do things that are not in the individual's interest. They do things maybe that are in the government's interest, or that are in the interest of whoever's paying for the government, the corporations, whoever else, whatever industries are funding that government. And so I don't think the government should really be providing things, but I think we should have a system that provides for the people with healthcare, with education, with lots of these things. We're going to talk much more about the structure of government and left and right, and what the government's roles can be and maybe should be or shouldn't be in future episodes. So I'm not going to get too much into that stuff, but basically I think that we should have a relatively minimal government, and I think we should have the individuals, the people themselves, keeping much of their own money, and the people should be providing the services themselves. If you kind of break it down, the left is basically a top-down system where you have a centralized government kind of like dictating terms for people. Now, the right is kind of a bottom-up approach where you have the people, the individuals themselves having more power, and you have power decentralized. And so you have power in lots of places rather than a top-down centralized power that would be the left. And so left is top down, basically. Left is pretty much, far left is like communism. That's like when the government basically controls everything. They own all the property, they own the industries, they do all the stuff, they make all the rules. That's communism. Far right would be like anarchy. That's like no government at all, right? And that's also probably not good. That's when you don't have any government. And then in that point, you have like the NFL with no referees, right? Like that's anarchy, and you can't have anarchy either. So you have to have something in the middle where you have some government, right? And it's just kind of a matter of figuring out what that should be, like how much government we should have. And sometimes it's in some cases it might be a lot of government. In other cases it might be no government. Like it kind of depends on the specific issue as to how much government is needed. But the government is a tool. I don't look at the government like some people do as being just like this terrible thing that we have to completely get rid of and abolish. I look at the government as being a tool. It's a product of humanity. It's actually the collective effort of humanity. It's like the collective rule-based system that the culture, that the society, that the civilization has. And so we should use that the best way that we can. We shouldn't just get rid of it and say, the government's terrible. We don't need the government. Let's have anarchy. That's not an answer. That's pandemonium. We also shouldn't say, let the government control everything and let them rule and essentially have an authoritarian thing where, the government is dictating all the terms. It's a centralized power in one city that's telling all the other cities what to do. That's also not good. I think that we should have a decentralized system where the individual has as much power and as much freedom and liberty as possible. But we also need to have a government that's reasonable, that's transparent, that's accountable, that does the work of the people, and that carries out functions that are necessary, like keeping people safe, like having an infrastructure, and just some basic stuff that we need. And so, like I said, we're going to get into much more of this stuff a bit later on in other episodes. But I did want to talk about some of that general stuff. And there's tons of other stuff. I have a whole list. I mean, I could go on about politics and economics for hours and hours, and we will collectively, not all today, but we will in time talk much more about this stuff. And I know right now I'm kind of talking a bit fast. I'm kind of just breezing over some of these things. But in future episodes, we're going to go much deeper into some of these topics, and I'm going to explain why I think these things. I'm also going to have other guests on the show debating me, critiquing my ideas and things like that. And we're going to be looking at lots of other ideas. I'm going to be taking things from the left philosophical ideas, some of the right philosophical ideas. And there's not just left and right, by the way. There's lots of other, philosophies, political philosophies and economic philosophies that we're going to be talking about and be learning about. And we're going to hopefully, come out of this later on, going down the road with the perspective that, has questioned a lot of different things and has, really kind of tried its best to find the best ways possible. And the best ways might work in some cases, like in St. Bart's, you might want the government to say, no houses over the tree lines. But you can't have that in the United States, right? The entire United States can't be like that, right? That's way too much government. we have to have bigger buildings in the United States. And so some things that work in some places might not work in others. And, and so we have to have a system that works, though. I'm all about system thinking. Like, we need to have systems that work. When you have a system that works, the things in that system, abide by the system. And so if the system is broken, sometimes if we look at like the healthcare system in the United States, it's a terrible thing for a million reasons. I could talk about how it's bad. Sometimes because there's too much government, sometimes because there's not enough government, and it's not just more or less government. There's lots of other intricate, complexities about it. But every healthcare system is different. If you look at Singapore or Germany or the UK or Canada, like, I can explain how all these different systems work, and I can explain how the United States ones works. And once we do that, we can kind of understand, okay, like, what has been working in some of these systems and what hasn't been working. And again, with always taking the liberty of the individual into account, what's the best way forward and things like that. And so we're going to look at things like that, like healthcare and education and all this kind of stuff going forward. You look at something like education, like why are college is so expensive, and people might say, well, that's because they're greedy and stuff. But perhaps that's part of it, right? I mean, they're going for their own self-interest, I guess. But one of the things is that government has been subsidizing colleges, right? So they've been giving grants and lots of like loans to college students in order to guarantee, or they've been guaranteeing them, and so that is incentivizing lots of more people to go to college, and it's basically just giving the colleges money. The government's just giving the colleges a bunch of money. They're guaranteeing money from the students and stuff. And so the colleges don't have an incentive to lower their prices. They can just kind of keep rising them. They're not really competing in a sense where they're trying to get lower prices, but they're just getting more and more money from the government from subsidizing education. And so they wind up raising their prices. And so sometimes you want government to get involved in order to help things, and they wind up doing the opposite. They wind up being counterproductive. You think, oh, let the government give, more loans to students, and that's going to help people go to college. And some of that is good, but it also helps to raise the prices of those colleges, because now colleges are just getting tons of money from the government. And the government wants to give us $29,000. Let's raise it to $31,000. We'll get another $2,000 from the government next year. And so, so some of these things happen too. So we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. I'm going to be breaking down lots of different political issues, and as we go forward. And a couple more quick things here. I found that, all right. Yeah. So I found that politics can be quite tribal. So that's another thing I wanted to mention. I feel like politics can be like super tribal. Like, people kind of get on their own teams, kind of like Red Sox and Yankees or something like that, and I think that when you get into a tribal mindset like this, you want your team to win, regardless if it's right or wrong. Like, if you're on the blue team or the red team, you want the other team to lose, And I think America, I'm in America now. I mean, America is North and South America, but when I say America, I mean the United States in that context. But I think the United States of America has become very tribal, and I think that's not a good thing. And we're going to talk much more about that. Like, if I had one lesson to learn from politics, I would say that it's become very tribal. And that's not good, because then you have these two sides battling, and rather than figuring out solutions together and working together, like a masculine and a feminine, let's work together to make something good. Instead of that, you have two sides fighting constantly. And you can look at situations like in Congress, you can see a map of like where Republican Congress people or senators or Congress representatives, whether the way Republicans vote and the way Democrats vote, and they can kind of take Republican representatives and Democrat representatives and give each one, like, give a Republican a red dot, a Democrat a blue dot, and you can kind of see how the blue dots vote. Like, for each issue, you can take any bill that gets put on the floor, and you can see how the Republicans vote and how the Democrats vote. And in years prior, a lot of times those dots would vote for the same bill. Even if it was a Democrat kind of bill or if it was a Republican-sponsored kind of bill, a lot of the times the blue dots and the red dots would both be like on the side voting for the bill, right? Because they liked it. Maybe it was in the interest of the country. But right now you have such a polarization where you bring a bill up, and if it's a Democrat bill, only the blue dots are voting for it. Or if it's a Republican bill, only the red dots are voting for it, because the country is so tribal. It's become so polarized. It's us and them. And we have these wedge issues that are just dividing everyone. And that's not a good thing. And we're going to talk much more about that as we go along. We're also going to talk about the, things like what Milton Friedman would say. One of the other arguments for having the government have less power with spending is, there's different ways that you can spend money. For example, like you can you can spend, like, say if you go to a restaurant and you're buying food for yourself, right? Well, all right, well, you care about the food, you care about the quality of the thing that you're getting, but you also care about the price, right? You're being frugal with your money, but you're also, caring about the quality of that item that you're buying. Now, if you say you go to a restaurant and you take your money and you buy something for someone else, maybe you now you're caring about the price. You're still caring about the price. You're still caring about the frugal aspect of it. You want to keep it inexpensive. But since it's a meal for someone else, maybe you're a nice person and you care, but maybe you don't care as much as you do if it were your own food, right? Like you're like, yeah, I don't know, get them that plate over there. They'll be fine. But make it cheap though, because it's your money that you're spending. So that's the second way you can spend money. The first one, you can spend your money for yourself. Second one, you're spending your money on someone else. Third one is when you take, I guess the third one would be when you take someone else's money and spend it on yourself, right? So now you take someone else's money, and that's kind of like what the government does, kind of like they're taking taxpayer money, and now you're taking someone else's money and you spend it on yourself, right? So now you care about the quality of the food, right? Like you care about what you're getting, but you don't really care about what you're spending anymore, because again, it's someone else's money, it's not your money, right? And so your incentive is to care about yourself. Everyone's self-interested, and so your incentive is to care about what you get, right? And if your self-interest is for yourself, and you're spending your own money, then your self-interest is going to care about the price of that. You're going to not want to spend too much, but you're also caring about your food. If you're spending someone else's money on yourself, then yeah, you care about the food that you're getting, but you don't care about the price as much. And so you might say, yeah, give me 1 glass of champagne. Nah, make it 2, make it 3 glasses of champagne. You might just kind of go all out and buy all kinds of food and all kinds of drinks and stuff because it's someone else's money. And now the fourth way that you can spend money is you spend someone else's money on someone else. Right? So now, and Milton Friedman would say this, right? He's one of my favorite economists. He would say, like, you're spending someone else's money on someone else. And that's kind of what the government does, essentially, right? The government takes taxpayer money and they spend it on someone else. And when you take someone else's money and spend it on someone else, now you're not involved at all. You're just spending someone else's money on someone else. You don't care about the price of it because it's someone else's money. You don't care about being frugal and keeping it cheap. And you also don't care about the quality, right? Because it's not for you. It's not the meal that you want. And so you just, maybe you do a little bit, you're altruistic, you're a good person, yeah, you kind of care a little bit, I get, but not like it was yourself. And so you spend someone else's money on someone else, right? And then that's kind of essentially what the government's doing. It's taking taxpayer money and it's spending it on projects for other people. And when you're doing that, your incentive isn't to be cheap and to be low cost and efficient. It's just to kind of spend on whatever else, on someone else. And a lot of times that someone else is someone who paid for their political campaigns. And so they're much more willing to take that taxpayer money and take a lot of that taxpayer money and give it to that someone else who just paid for their political campaign. And so there's a lot of corruption involved as well. And so, so when you give the government money, a lot of times it gets spent on someone else inefficiently, sometimes corruptly, in a way that you don't really want as a taxpayer. And so that's my problem with government, and that's why I'm not so much on the left anymore. I think the left is all about more taxes. They're all about having the government having more power, more top-down, more government control over things, more government dictating this and dictating that, and the government providing this and the government providing that. And the government doesn't do a good job at providing almost anything. You want to have like a bridge built by the government, it's going to take 3 years, be way over budget. There's going to be probably a lot of corruption. There's going to be unions involved, so they're not working very hard a lot of the time. They're getting paid more than they probably should. There's, they're going on strike and they have, all kinds of issues and stuff. And so it's very inefficient, but you have a private business do it, and their incentive is to do it quick and to do it well and to make it so it lasts. And they do it a lot faster at a lot cheaper cost and stuff like that. And so some of these issues with government can just simply be broken down into economic incentives. And we're going to talk much more about that stuff. Maybe I'm giving the government a bit of a hard time. I apologize if I'm being a bit harsh on the government right now, and all these kinds of policies. Maybe I'm being a bit tough on them, but it's not all bad. The government does lots of good things too, and I love the government. And there's plenty of roles for the government. Most people in the government are trying to do good things. They're not bad people. They're out there. They're trying to help other people and stuff like that. And the government is a useful tool, and it's a thing that we should all love and we should all care about. And it's our government, so we should make it great. And I'm not saying it's bad and stuff like that. I feel like I'm being a bit harsh, but there are some issues with it. And so I guess we're going to wrap up now. But maybe one of the last things that I'll say here, one of the other things that we're going to get into, would be like the currency of the United States too, because right now the United States has the reserve currency, and they're also in over $38 trillion of debt, I think, at this point, with many more trillions in obligations, future obligations. So we're really in well over $100 trillion in debt if you look at the future debt. But it's stuff that we have to pay in the future, not just debt owed right now. Obligations like with Social Security and stuff like that are unpaid and things like this. But regardless, that's an unsustainable thing. And in the reserve currency of the United States, that means that the world uses dollars basically to carry out transactions around the world. A lot of times for oil and things like that, but they use it for other things too. And the United States right now has that status. They have the reserve currency. It's the most stable currency, but it has some problems, and there's lots of things going on behind the scenes that we're going to talk about in future episodes that are threatening that. And then I'm going to also talk about what I think should be happening with currency and why digital, I'm going to also talk about some of the things about digital currencies too and why they can be problematic. They have some good sides to them, but there are lots of downsides to them, and they're very dangerous to implement. And so we'll be talking about that kind of stuff too. But I think I'm going to kind of wrap this episode up because I think we're going into about an hour and a half, and we still have to have Marcelo on for a few minutes. So I think I'm going to end things just around now. Future episodes, we're going to talk about biotech and longevity and stuff like age reversal and things like that. I'm also going to be talking about UFOs really soon. So I think maybe in episode number 2 or 3, we'll get into UFOs. I've been really researching this a lot lately. We've been talking about how UFOs are, these are objects that people have created, and whether or not they're from aliens, I'm not sure, but they're real, and they're in underground bunkers, and there's a group or groups that are in control of them, and they are wild machines. They can do wild things. They can go underwater, and they can these crafts that we have are wild, and they're kind of behind the scenes right now, but we're going to talk much more about that, and I know a little bit about the backstory about how they were created and things like that, so that's interesting. And we have lots of other stuff to talk about. I also want to talk about COVID and stuff too, some of my experiences in Tulum with COVID, how no one was wearing any masks, but back in the US they were all wearing masks and stuff, and how that played out, and how I went to Tulum thinking it was going to be dead during the pandemic, and I wound up being like totally alive, and there was lines of people out the doors of bars. People were sharing drinks, sharing joints, right in the heart of COVID. No one was wearing any masks. We're up in the United States, everyone had masks, everyone was social distancing and all this kind of stuff. And then the vaccine came along, and that was a huge moneymaker for some of these companies, and the whole thing was incredibly corrupt. But I'll talk about that in a future episode as well. And there's a million things I want to talk about. The Upanishads from the ancient Vedic texts in India. I want to talk about those pretty soon in an upcoming episode. Those are kind of like a spiritual text that like a lot of the other texts get derived from. There's a million things I want to talk about as we go forward. So I hope that you check it out again. I hope that you listen again. I'm going to have Marcelo on. I'm going to leave here. I'm going to go hook up with Marcelo, and we're going to link up and maybe have a beer and finish out the rest of this episode. We might be doing it at sunset. I don't know. And then I'll post this up later on today or something. And that's it. So all right. Marcelo's coming on, and that's pretty much it for our topics right now. But I hope that you join us again, and stay tuned for the second part of this episode when we have my good friend Marcelo joining the show. So thanks everyone for listening to me in my first segment, and I hope that you liked it. I hope I wasn't too boring. I hope that I didn't talk too fast. I'm going to learn from this episode, so in future episodes I'm probably going to talk a lot, maybe a bit slower, maybe I'll be a bit more refined, maybe I'll have much more of like a structured thing to say rather than just a few bullet points. We'll figure it out. We're going to work, we're going to grow and evolve as the show goes. Hopefully I'll look back at this episode and be like, wow, that one was off the cuff, while my 80th one will be, maybe my 88th one will be a little bit better. We'll see. But hopefully I make it to 88 episodes. We'll see. Maybe that's what I should do. Just 88 episodes. We'll call it that. We might do that. All right. So for this show, we might just do 88. I just have that idea right now. Maybe on the 88th one, I'm just like, all right, that was it. That was the RaRa. All shows must end. Thank you for joining. 88 episode. Maybe I'll even do it from right here. 88, from right in the same exact spot. That would be sweet. Maybe I'll do 188. Maybe I'll do 8. Maybe I'll just do 8. 8.5. I don't know how many we'll do, but it's going to be every Friday though, so I hope you join. And rock and roll. All right, Marcelo's coming up. See everyone. RaRa.